Nestled within the stunning red rock landscape of Sedona, Arizona, Palatki Heritage Site offers a fascinating glimpse into the ancient world of the Sinagua people who once inhabited this region over 800 years ago. Meaning red house in the Hopi language, Palatki is one of the most significant archaeological sites in the area, showcasing well-preserved cliff dwellings and striking rock art that reflects a deep connection between the people and the land. In this video, we'll explore the rich history of Palatki, delving into the lives of the Sinagua culture that mysteriously vanished in the late 13th century. We'll see remnants of their stone dwellings tucked beneath towering sandstone cliffs, and examine the centuries-old pictographs and petroglyphs that adorn the rock faces, offering insight into their beliefs, rituals, and daily lives. After about 10 miles of dusty red dirt roads, we arrive at the parking area of Palatki. Next to the Visitors Center, where they have a small museum of local artifacts, then on to the cliff dwelling at the cliff base, where a knowledgeable docent will tell some history. Along the way, we'll uncover how these early inhabitants adapted to the environment and what may have led to their departure. Join us as we journey through time and uncover the stories carved into the red rocks of Palatki. It's early morning here in the Sedona area, and I'm visiting the Palatki Heritage Site. It's by reservation only, and should be pretty amazing. It was excavated in 1931, and is something that people travel from all over the world to see. Palatki requires a reservation to visit, easily done online. I'll leave a link in the description. It's a quick walk from the parking area to the visitor center, where you will check in on arrival. Palatki is run by the Forest Service and provides docents to help visitors better understand the site.
Look between the two taller trees, you can hardly see right now, there's a white band. Underneath that white band you'll see some blocked-in windows. Those are the dwellings. Wow. You've got 6 rooms on this side. There are 3 rooms underneath that black staining in the alcove. Anywhere you see the black staining is where water comes down. We had waterfalls yesterday coming off of that baby. Not a lot, but when the rain comes in and the snow is melting, it's spectacular. Anyway, Wayne is waiting for you up there.
Well, let me introduce. My name's Wayne. I'm a volunteer with a group called Friends of the Forest. And what I always say, our job is just to give you a rudimentary idea of what we're looking at. So this is a dwelling site called Palatki. And in the Hopi language, Palatki means red house. So I always say pretty obvious why they called it what they did. But this is a dwelling built roughly in the year 1100 by a group of people that we call the Sinagua. Very little is known of the Sinagua. No written history, oral history is fractured, but the speculation is that they originally came into this area roughly about the year 600, traveling north from Mexico. And early on they were nomadic, always on the move with seasons and animal herds. But roughly in the year 850 they started to cultivate corn. And by the year 1100 they'd become experts in agriculture, and that's what allowed them to build permanent dwelling sites. And basically what they did was they used these fields behind us here to grow corn, cotton, squash, and beans.
Apartment building.
And between what we have here and then extending all the way into the next alcove, and this was all one contiguous community, probably about 90 people lived here at any one time. Now I always say it's very clever to build in an alcove like this because all of this is done by hand. These people did not have horses or donkeys. They didn't have wheels or carts or levers. And so when you do things by hand, you want to do it economical. And part of the economy of building in the alcove is you don't have to build a back wall. And if you look up, we have this huge natural roof. So for the second floor, you don't have to build a roof. You take advantage of the alcove. But the real cleverness is they would tend to build in south-facing alcoves. So in the summer, when the sun rises further in the north, we're in the shade here till about 1 o'clock. And when it's 95, being in the shade makes a big difference. But then in the winter, the sun rises further in the south. And the south sun will heat the back wall. And then at night, the wall will radiate out the captured heat. And it can be up to 10 degrees warmer within the alcove versus out in the fields. So very clever to build how they did and where they did. So I think Dave sent you up here, and he mentioned the second part of the tour is to an alcove where there's 1,100 pictographs or painted images. Here there's only 2. A little bit hard to see, but if you look way up high to the right, so if you see where my laser is, you can see there's a large painted shield. There's one here, another one here, very faint. And so the same ladders that they would have used to get up to the second floor, they would have used those ladders to gain the heights and paint the shields. And when the shields were freshly painted, they would have been very bright, very visible. And part of the purpose is to alert any intruders coming into the canyon that this is an occupied alcove, like an address symbol in a sense. Then the other thing that's pretty neat, if we look over here on the wall, you can still see the handprints in the mortar. The more you look, actually, they're all over the place. But if you think about it, some fellow human being did that almost 1,000 years ago, and here we are, we still see evidence of their labors and activities. And it's pretty common, too, at these places, you find a lot of bits and pieces. So you find a lot of what are called pottery sherds.
Look at that.
And you can see that this is decorative or painted pottery. And typically the painted pottery came from the Indians up in Flagstaff. And so these guys would go up to Flag and they would trade food or clothing for decorative pottery. And the other thing they would get from the Flagstaff area is a volcanic glass called obsidian. It's a material that you can fracture and make very sharp edges for cutting and scraping, so it was a prized material. And then it's not uncommon, we still find the corn that they grew. Now I lived in Michigan. You leave corn outside for a year and it's gone, it's rotted and gone. But here within the plaza, within the dwelling, it's bone dry, it never gets wet. And so this is hundreds of years old. And I always say, I'd have to eat 3 or 4 of these. You know, we have all the benefits of science and genetic engineering, but this is what they struggled with to make their living. And they think it was a struggle, that the average lifespan was 20 to 25, very high infant mortality. The shaman class may have lived a little bit longer, but I always say they were like the office workers in a sense. They weren't out in the fields doing the heavy lifting. But nevertheless, they were able to leave us this legacy. So take as many pictures as you wish. I forgot to mention there's a 20-question multiple choice test just to see if you were listening. But no, please take pictures. If there's questions, ask. And then when you finish, you go back down the same pathway. And George will be over in the alcove with all the pictographs, and he'll give you a little spiel on the pictographs.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep,
you.
yep, you're welcome.
What did they use as paint?
So the white paint is clay, animal fat, and water.
Oh,
And the red paint, they use a rock called hematite. I don't see the chunks laying around, but they use hematite, they grind it up, animal fat and water.
Oh, interesting.
staying power.
Yeah.
Well, and again, it never gets wet. You know, I
Yeah.
always say, I think if that would get wet, it would be long gone.
Yeah.
And the same with the dwelling. It's not like cement. You know, the mortar is just the red dirt. And if it would get wet, it would have disintegrated long ago. But because it's so protected.
How many people do they estimate lived here?
Well, 90 here, but within the canyon, they think there might have been as many as 210.
Oh, wow.
So that tells you there's more.
There's issues with, well, I guess there's always issues with water. There seemed to be a drop that was pretty bad.
Well, within the canyon, because there were floods. So you don't have floods there and flood here.
Yeah, right, doesn't seem consistent,
I
yeah.
don't think you know.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
Yep. Yeah, because if you go not that far away towards that.
This site can only be accessed via a tour that you must sign up for beforehand. It is free, but only allows up to 10 or 12 people, so it's good to plan ahead. The cliff dwellings were pretty amazing. They're about 3-story high and well protected. After the cliff dwellings, we headed over to see some rock art on a panel that's supposed to go back 11,000 years, so we'll see. Palatki is home to some of the most remarkable examples of ancient rock art in the American Southwest, offering a vivid window into the spiritual and cultural world of its early inhabitants. The site contains both pictographs and petroglyphs. These artworks were created by the Sinagua people between 1150 and 1350 CE, although some markings may date back thousands of years to earlier archaic cultures. The imagery ranges from geometric designs and animal figures to handprints and mysterious symbols whose meanings remain unknown, suggesting their use in rituals, storytelling, or possibly as a form of communication or record keeping. The location of the rock art beneath overhanging cliffs helped preserve it for centuries, shielding it from rain and harsh desert sun. We'll take a look up close, gaining a deeper appreciation for the artistic complexity and cultural significance of this site. Here, a docent will share his knowledge on this amazing place.
Morning, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Quite well, thank you. Today, half the year is Sedona, the other half, and this is the other half. I do this one day a week. Me and the other guy over there switch back and forth. This is called the grotto because it is a cave. Historically, it has had water in it. So it was a nice place to come, cool, and people did come here for literally thousands and thousands of years. We have records, archaeological records that will tell us a lot about that. But before we start talking about the renderings on the walls, I'd like to just share this little thing with you. If you turn around back there, look at that headland there. Big white rock on the end, the big white mountain is Bear Mountain. And we come down that ridge line to the cupcake over there.
Okay.
This is what we're looking at here. Most people
yeah.
figured out that if they get up here at dawn in the summer, the sun would be coming up there. That's a useful thing if you're an agricultural society. You know time to plant. Later on, the equinoxes, middle of the half a year, right up there in the winter, sun is coming up over the birthday cake there. So, yeah, somebody brilliant, some people, who rendered this on the wall back there. Kind of a mirror image, but there's Bear Mountain, big mountains. There's the sun. Equinox is right there where that little green mark is that you can barely see. And the winter solstice is over there. It is a mirror image. So I wish it was the other way, but that's been there a really long time. I assume that people knew what that meant and could use it to tell, where they were in the year. First thing I'd like to show you is that these little portable pictographs that you see stacked here. There's 1, 2, 3, and way across 4 and 5. And that little device right there is a dust monitor because this place is falling into disrepair, has been for thousands of years probably. The dust, erosion, wind is basically making these things less and less visible all the time. Forest Service is very interested in knowing how quickly that's happening, although I don't know how they think they could figure it out in our short lifetimes. But they made these, they had artists paint these little portable pictographs using the same pigments that the ancients have used on the walls, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Portable pictographs to take to the laboratory over there cottonwood and try to determine after periods of time have passed just how much wear and tear there is on these. So they do look beautiful and vibrant because they're, painted last year by artists. So there is that. And that is what the dust monitor is also designed to do. We're just trying to see how fast it's going. It is going, but you don't do anything about it. You don't scrub it with Ajax or spray it with a hose or anything like that. It's just what it is. The oldest culture that we have signs of here is the paleo hunters who were here like maybe 10,000, 9,000, 11,000 BC on the edge of the ice floe, killing big animals. We call them the big game hunters. They were killing mammoths, mastodons, giant camels, giant sloths, everything. Those sort of animals were here. We have signs of those people called the Clovis people, the Clovis culture. We found some Clovis points actually here, a couple here and two more over in Hananki. Pretty much proves that they were here. What they did on the walls is incisions, and they have been inspected and corrected and examined by eminent archaeologists for years to try to figure out what they mean. They have figured out that they are old. And I'm going to show you more as we walk around, but just a little taste right up there. Vertical incisions. Dug into the rock with thought in mind, and often also horizontal parallel incisions. Now in that particular one there are some white markings. Those are way more recent, just kind of done on top of that. So they have managed to study those and date some of them as coming from that period of time, 10,000 BC. Gosh darn, that's old, isn't it? 9,000 BC. Something happened, according to the geological record, big animals disappeared around 9,000 BC. They don't know why. They have some theories. They think maybe a cosmic cataclysm, drought, overhunting, all of those things. But after that period of time, there were no more skeletal remains from mammoths and mastodons out there in the dirt. So those people, by the way, they did hunt those animals with a thing called an atlatl. Anybody know what that is? It's a marvelously designed tool for throwing spears. You throw a spear? Yeah. There's one down in the museum if you want to check it out. It kind of gives you leverage back there. You hold it like this, and the spear is back there.
Yeah.
And they will say that that gives you 60% more impact when it hits.
It's like a highlight.
So anyway, that's pretty neat, yeah. So those people, I don't know, they weren't able to kill those animals anymore, but they didn't just disappear. I think they were the precursors of what we call the Archaic culture, which they have signs of that from about 5,000 BC right up until about 600 AD, when the Sinagua came there and built a dwelling. Those people, the Archaic people, in addition to working on developing agriculture somewhat, were also hunters and gatherers, but they used a red pigment made from iron oxide, and there is that right there. And there's some really beautiful things. Look, high right there, 2 o'clock. Those are really, really old. The red, the white disappeared, but the red is holding strong. Those are from the Archaic period. You can see down there, a little bit further right, some of the water markings. And there are lots of water markings here because there was water coming down. Those are also from the Archaic period. One thing about them that's interesting is they're generally geometric. We'll be looking at some Apache and Sinagua stuff that is figurative, but The archaic is usually designs. So they were here for a really, really long time, doing their thing. And after them, there were the Sinagua people who came into this valley here, Red Canyon over here, and they cultivated it. They had really figured out the agricultural thing. They grew corn, they grew squash, they grew beans, they grew cotton, and they lived in pit houses. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of a pit house, but they look pretty homey, except they're in the ground. You know? A room in the ground with an upraised part with a roof on it. They lived there for 500 or 600 years and did their agriculture. And at some point, around 1175, in that period of time, 1175 AD, they started to build these structures. They built that one, Palatki over there, the red house, and they built Honanki, which is a big structure around the corner. If you ever can get around, you just take the first right turn and go out over a hellish road, and you can get out and walk and see a whole series of dwellings. So, those people, they call them a Sinagua, which is just a name they gave to the culture that was here because they just didn't have a better idea. There was water, but that name was given to the people that did this dwelling over here, 1938 or something like that, something odd. Anyway, we'll call them Sinagua, although the Hopi say that they're their ancestors. They call them Hisatsanon, the ancient people. Okay, so they were here doing agriculture, living in the building, doing stuff that I hope Wayne told you about over there, the weaving and the pottery and those sorts of things. They like to use white pigment. Kaolin clay, actually, if you do pottery or glazes, still in use. Kaolin is a white clay mixed with bear fat, which I forgot to mention because all of the renderings have been mixed with bear fat, except for the incisions. All of the archaic red things, you mix the pigment with bear fat or deer fat and put it on the wall, and by golly, it'll stay there for thousands of years if you have it in a safe place. The Sinagua people could see things that they did. They did figurative things. You can recognize those as being some sorts of animals. And as we go around the corner, we'll see more of that, but those are very recognizable, that style. Although that one on the bottom, the tail there, I don't know. We don't know what was going on in people's minds, but maybe it's a spirit or a demon or something magical. Don't know. They were here, as Wayne probably told you, until around, I don't know, let's see, 1175, 12, around 1350 to 1400 AD, and then they split. And I hope that he talked to you about that, because I don't have time to tell you about that much, but they all left. So this wasn't a vacuum, though. It's a beautiful place. There was water. There was land. So other people came in here, and those people are the Apache and those Yavapai. I always have trouble bringing that one up. Yavapai and Apache people moved into this area. They don't really know if those particular people migrated here or from the South America or something like that. They just were here, and they were living here. They lived light on the land. They didn't build things. They didn't tear things down. They hunted. They gathered. They used natural plants and natural animals to survive here. They were here until about the 1800s. They used carbon soot or charcoal from a fire mixed with animal fat to make their renderings on the walls, which are invariably black. This is a little interesting. We're going to take a look at this here. I like this. There's a ladder, right? Sometimes when you see things that are up there, they look like something you might recognize, like a cross or something, but they probably aren't. But a ladder is a ladder. The amount of feathers indicated, you know, which warrior group they were in. So that's kind of neat to see that there. They didn't have any horses here until about 1530 or so. That's documented by the Spanish, who, you know, Europeans can write and keep records like that. That's when the Spanish came in and they left some horses. So that's after that time, that particular pictograph there. By the way, pictograph is different from a petroglyph. You probably know this, but I'll just refresh your memory a little. Pictograph is on the rock. These are all pictographs, except for the etchings. Petroglyph is carved into the rock, so that's the difference between those. So we're going to march around here. I'm going to like to go first because I want to show you some distinctive things. It just looks like a big mishmash to you now, maybe, but underneath this panel are literally thousands of finely incised lines, vertical, horizontal. You can see them with special cameras or under light. So those would be the oldest things here. You can see some archaic work, the red things, figures, those would be archaic. And then there's a lot of things in the white. Those would be the Sinagua, probably, most of them. And then you get down to some black markings. Those might be Apache and Yavapai, sort of layered on there. And I don't think that they really thought they were insulting people by going over them. Maybe they were drawing power from the elders. I don't know the thought behind that glyph right there. That's for P.J. Perleyman and his girlfriend Jessica Tanner there. That's probably from about 1900 or 1905. So as you walk around, some very good etchings there, parallel and vertical, making a grid. Or somebody standing like this, I really don't know. There's some things there that we recognize, and lots of old etchings. There's something there, a geometric kind of design. That would probably be archaic, and it could be thousands of years old. This is particularly interesting to me. If you look at this blob here, and you start to hone in on it a little bit, it is a group of figures. And they call them, I don't know, the archaeologists call them ghosty guys, but I don't know what the archaic people call them, but these are dated around 5000 BC. A bunch of figures. There are 5 figures. They're common, the way they stand. They don't seem to have any arms that really show very much, or a head. It's like a ghost. What does show is longish legs and bird feet. There are several of them there. And some Sinagua animals, critters. It's quite possible to tell what those are. And there's a sort of a humanoid figure there. They're not too common. One thing that is kind of neat right here is this little figure. This is a famous little figure right here. It looks like someone from space. Mm-hmm. It looks like Leia from Star Wars. And what it really looks like is a Hopi maiden who is ready to be married. And that is a custom that is still used in Hopi. I guess traditional people in Hopi particularly. I don't know if people with iPhones and boomboxes do this, but this is a traditional Hopi girl. When she gets to be old enough to be married, female relatives in her family put her hair up into this beautiful kind of pattern, swirls. I don't know what you would call them exactly, but she has to wear those until she gets married. And if she does get married, then she can let the hair down. Anyway, tucked in there, some nice little geometric designs. And that's the Hopi Maiden, as they're calling it. It seems like a good story. We're really going to look at this black wall here, which is unique here. This is neat here. This is really special. Right here on this black wall. Those kind of things back there are the same style of work, but they're black. And that's the style of the Apache Yavapai, but they're not the same. The Apache Yavapai kind of drew theirs with strokes. So they thought, whoa, that is really remarkable. How come those are black? They figured out that down below this black wall, there was an agave roasting pit, which is a place where they have big fire, big smoke, big fire, while they're roasting agaves to eat. They figured that the smoke and the heat from that fire interacted with the bear fat and just kind of changed it so that it turned black. They actually did a little incision down somewhere, some little invisible place, and they did learn that this stuff was white, historically, all done in the white, so that's kind of neat. So, phew, I think I gave you almost the whole thing. So, I'm going to have to turn around. You have any questions, you can ask me.
As we leave the timeless beauty of Palatki behind, we're reminded of the deep human history etched into its red rock walls, a legacy of resilience, creativity, and connection to the land. The cliff dwellings and ancient symbols left by the Sinagua people continue to inspire awe and curiosity, offering a rare window into a world long past. By preserving and honoring these sacred spaces, we ensure that their stories endure for future generations. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Palatki's remarkable history. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.